A lot of the time when like you're stressed out or like you're not where you want to be in life, the linchpin that's missing is the physical fitness aspect. As your body takes wear and tear, what people need to understand is that it's motion that cures you. Now you, infantry, walking a lot, does that contribute to the knee surgery you just had?
Yeah, because you and I keep on talking about, you've had your heart thing, and I've had my knee replaced recently.
We knew each other before we even had these things.
We did,
right?
We knew each other
We were healthy.
But my knees were wrecked long before then. I had these chronically dislocated knees when I was a teenager, and my dad was...
The Army still took you?
Well, that's what I was about to say, is my dad was an orthopedic surgeon, and now I got injured a couple times at West Point. And while I was home on leave, he took me to see this famous doctor named McGinty. And McGinty invented the arthroscope. And so he takes me to see him, and McGinty's looking at my knees, and McGinty just looks up. And these are two old World War II guys. He looks at my dad and he says, "This guy's at West Point." And my dad said, "Army physical."
I'll just let you through.
Yeah. They didn't notice it actually, and I certainly didn't bring it up, but I destroyed my left knee in a softball game at West Point, so they reconstructed it, and it did very well for 40 years. I'm sure that all that walking with a rucksack, Ranger School, all the parachute jumps, I really slammed into the earth hard a few times. I'm sure that didn't help.
Sure.
But at the same time, that surgery lasted 40 years before I had to get this thing replaced. And the VA did a marvelous job. And as you know, I'm having a really good recovery from that.
And two things with that. How important do you think the mindset is of recovery, but also being in shape before you went in? Because you were working out before you went in.
Right.
Before, and then knowing you had the surgery, still working out to prepare for the surgery. I like to tell people that, like I'm a short guy, right?
Yeah.
But I started working out for women, right? You're a teenager.
You're gonna impress people. Yeah.
And then you're working out for women in martial arts.
Yeah.
Then you're working out for, women, martial arts, and then you want to not be sore anymore in the morning.
Right.
Because as your body takes wear and tear, what people need to understand is that it's motion that cures you.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Motion and stretching. My opinion, pharmaceuticals can help, but a lot of times they mask the pain.
Right.
And if you don't do anything when you're on the medication to get better, it's just that cycle.
I agree with that.
Right? So even when I was a PT, they get a cortisone injection. Sometimes they come see me right away from the doc. Why? Because we need to move you. Right? Because the cortisone will help, or the lidocaine will help, but I got to move you. I got to stretch you.
Exactly.
Right? So then I started working out for the women. I started working out for the martial arts to not be sore, but then to get my head on straight.
Yeah.
There's the mental aspect.
That's it.
Right? Especially owning a business.
Yeah.
Now, after surgery, I work out for women. Well, I have my girlfriend, so you can edit that. For the martial arts, not be sore, to have my head on straight, but also to stay healthy as I get older.
Exactly.
So working out for me has now evolved.
Right.
Whereas when I was 13 on my universal machine,
right?
I wasn't thinking about, after heart surgery, you're going to need this in 40 years, right? You got to think, but mindset and being in shape, what do you think?
Yeah, because you and I have talked about this here, and I've talked to a couple of the other guys at the gym, gals at the gym who've had knees done, and they all said the same thing you're talking about. Is that first of all, before I say that people should be physically fit, it's that as long as you can do it. There are people out there who are physically can't be fit, and I just don't want to just gloss over them. And of course, I always have to say it's you consult your physician, before you do anything like this. But at the same time, just a physical fitness routine that fits your lifestyle and fits what time you've got available to dedicate to it, I think makes a huge difference when it comes time to recover from an injury, because your body already used to, when we lift weights, we're actually injuring the muscle. Mm-hmm. Then it grows. And so the body is used to this kind of a cycle, but also left knee I get it replaced, and I really can't do a lot with it at first, but it helped that the right leg, the right knee has got its problems, the right leg was already very strong. And so that I could put the weight on the right leg and then do the work with the left leg in all the different exercises. And everybody I've talked to, from doctors to people at the gym, fitness professionals like yourself, they all say the same things, that the body recovers much better from an injury or a surgery if you're already physically fit. And then, of course, going into physical therapy is if you haven't been in a fitness program, if you're not used to going to the gym, or if you don't have to go to the gym, if you're not used to going up and going for the walk, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, things like that. If you're not used to that, then just going into the physical therapy area, because mine was a lot like your gym here, is the way it was arranged. And it was a lot like going to the gym. And a lot of it was the weightlifting machines were there. They were just geared to someone whose knee has been just replaced. So I think that you're absolutely right. Is that if you're more fit you are, the better off you're able to handle this mentally and physically.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the time when you're stressed out or you're not where you want to be in life, the linchpin that's missing is the physical fitness aspect.
Yeah.
Right? Because we take our bodies everywhere right now, right?
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere without your body.
That's it.
And if your body is always in pain, what does that do to your mental state? Right? So you could be having a great day, everything's going great, you throw your back out, everything switches.
Absolutely. You can't think of anything else.
Right.
And this is why it's like when I hear people talking, I'm lucky, I've got some minor arthritis from the knee injuries. I don't have the chronic pain. And when people are talking about chronic pain, it's so important to listen to them, because it's what you're saying, is that it's on your mind all the time. It's limiting what you can do. And that, I definitely have to agree with that.
Yeah, and again, this is the vessel right now that we'll talk about AI in the future, but this is what we have to do to take it through life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you're unable to be, and again, I have perspective because, as a physical therapist, when I was a 25-year-old kid, I worked in nursing homes.
Yeah.
I was in hospitals.
Good.
I see end of life.
Right.
So as your mobility decreases, that's where you get into issues.
Right.
And my mom, and a lot of healthcare professionals go into healthcare because one of their parents is chronically sick.
Right.
Right. It pushes people into it. My mom has been sick, most of her life. And she put her on a high dose of prednisone. She's been on prednisone for 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah, you're on prednisone for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And then she had another ailment, so they increased it. Her eye doctor increased it. Well, it basically caused her muscles not to work.
Wow.
Right? Because I guess when you're on that much prednisone, I think it's the potassium can't go into the muscles. If you can't get the potassium into the muscles, they can't contract.
Yeah.
She fell. Right? And now you have a person who was, has her ups and downs, was actually doing well before this. And now you're back where you were, maybe when I was younger. So I had the conversation with her, because now she went to the hospital, she went to the nursing home, and then we knew enough that we needed to bring her out of the nursing home and back home, where we could get home care for mental state, whatever.
Yeah.
I'd be like, hey Ma, you do your exercise, and she didn't want to do it, and I was like, listen, very nicely, but sometimes you have to be a little stern, you were saying.
Right. Yeah.
I was like, if you don't start doing your exercises and moving, you're just on the couch, I was like, you will die.
Yeah.
I know, I've seen this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where the moment where she was like, okay, right? And then, she has ups and downs, but now she's more motivated. Actually, today I talked to you at the gym.
Yeah.
Their parents live with me.
Okay.
Right? So I go home and she's sitting up on the couch. I'm like, hey, that's great. Right?
There you go.
She goes, I walked to the bathroom. I go, what?
Yeah.
You haven't walked by yourself in
very good
8 weeks. Yeah, but the oxygen thing is there, right? And I'm like, right? She hasn't got up. I was I was happy, but I was also no one's home.
I know.
So I'm like, oh man, but I'm glad she did it and she was proud.
Right.
But I was like, Ma, therapy's still coming to get you up this, learn all this stuff. So, because as people get older, especially once you start falling, that's going to start to be the end of it.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to be bleak.
Yeah.
But once you have multiple falls, now it starts to, I had as a PT, I was a full-time PT, but I kept a patient for 15 years who was a priest.
Wow.
And when COVID hit, I went to the rectory, to his house. And the past year or so, he was slowing down.
Right.
By the time when I had heart surgery, I didn't see him for like 6 weeks, obviously, because I was in the hospital.
Yeah, you had a reason. Yeah.
But when I came back, I was like, wow, I didn't leave you like this. Right now, he had other home care coming too, but he was starting to fall.
Yeah.
And then, it became where they had to move him into an assisted living.
Right.
And we had good talks. But I was like, I'm the therapist. I've been with him a while.
Yeah.
But I was like, listen, like, try to say, like, nobody wants to go to a nursing home.
Right.
To live at all. I know him really well, and I was like, try to get home care.
Yeah.
People come in, right? He had enough money where he could do that.
Good.
And then, the decision was made, and I'm not saying it's the wrong decision, but they put him in assisted living.
Yeah.
And I guess he was doing well, but then they moved him to a floor, which is like what I understand, you're living. And he had a heart attack. And I was like, I understand, like, you were being independent.
Right.
Now you go to assisted living. Now you know you're not getting out of here.
Right.
Don't you think that would get you nervous too?
Yeah, of course. It's like this mindset of, okay, this is the end of the road.
Mm-hmm.
And, I watched that TV show Yellowstone.
Yeah.
I watched that. And there's a point where the Kevin Costner character, he's not a young man. He's lived a very tough life. And then he ends up getting shot at one point. I don't want to give anything away here, but
you already did.
Yeah, I hope people won't hold that against me. But he's talking to his son, and this is exactly what you're talking about, where he had gone riding on the ranch, recovering from getting shot. And he just says, all I know about life is when you stop moving, it's over. And that's right on the TV. And I thought about that immediately when you said that. It was the John Dutton saying it. So when you stop moving, it's over.
And it's true. And, everybody has different, like, I can't cook. Right?
Right.
So everyone has different areas where they're an expert, so to speak. Movement is mine, from the martial arts, from the PT,
absolutely,
from the fitness world now. And, when you're in a fitness program, everything gets better.
Yeah.
It's very rarely where you have a fitness program and things get worse.
Yeah.
You probably have medical stuff going on.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to recommend for everybody, which is why I'm here. Like, we really cater to women. But this is your first time here.
Right, I've been here. But
what do you think?
You got a great setup here. I was saying, I love the fact you've got all of these, I call them heavy bags.
Yeah, we call them weight
bags. Okay, and because I did a little intramural boxing at West Point, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It was college level boxing. I'm not telling you that I was any good at this at all. But we had the facilities, and we had this one big room. That's what it reminded me of here. I'm looking at all these weight bags that you got here. And it must have been 20 heavy bags. And the thing about a heavy bag is you've got to have room to go all the way around it without bumping into someone hitting the other bag. So you just can imagine this is a room. And you end up with like 20 fighters in there hitting the bag with somebody holding the bag, coaching them. And it was quite an interesting little experience there. And I found out I was better at coaching them.
Hey, we can't be great at everything. Tell me about your writing.
Yeah.
And some people might not know, because I didn't know this until I had studied marketing. Copywriting is like the words that you would use to advertise and market.
Exactly.
Right? It's a fancy word for writing.
Exactly.
For that.
That's what it is.
But yeah, so you have that, but you have your own stuff.
Yes.
So let's talk about.
Yes, thank you. So I've always been a bit of a writer, always writing in my spare time, holding down full-time jobs, and writing. I've written a little history, but mostly fiction. And so I had been doing that on the side, and in 2004, I actually won this pretty big competition that St. Martin's Press ran. He wrote a full mystery novel and submitted it, and then I made the cut, and then finally they said, you won the thing. So it was called the Malice Domestic Award, and there's a convention down in Bethesda, and I'm actually going there again this year. So I went down and got this award, and that started me actually as a published author.
Okay.
And so there were 4 books in that series. And I've written a whole bunch of different things. I've got a couple of horror novels. I've got a theater-themed murder mystery novel called Death Troop that I knew nothing about the theater, but I just wanted to write something about it. And so I literally got the Idiot's Guide to Amateur Theatrics. And I can't recommend the Idiot's Guide books enough. Everything is in there. If you want to know something about something, you can always go on YouTube, and YouTube's got some great videos about just about anything. But the Idiot's Guides, I find, really straighten me out. So I went from reading the Idiot's Guide to Amateur Theatricals, all the way up to reading the memoirs of some of these great Broadway directors, and then wrote the book. And I think I did a decent enough job on that. But then I wanted to write a science fiction novel. And so that was one here. It's Glory, Maine. And
what's the name? Glory,
Maine.
Okay.
And
because at first,
yeah,
there's a big, I thought it was just Glory.
Yeah.
But that's like a big World War II.
Yeah,
Civil War.
Civil War.
Yeah.
Movie.
That's like, okay, that's in my head. Okay,
Great
Glory,
movie.
Maine.
Yeah, the movie Glory is about the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, which
all black,
was
right?
all black.
Yeah.
And they were led by white officers, and it's a story there. And there's a giant bronze plaque of the 54th on the Common, on Boston Common, directly in front of the State House. So that's another one of those things to check out if you're ever up on Boston Common. But anyway, but Glory, Maine here. The reason it's called Glory, Maine is because you've got different headquarters in the military. This is a military science fiction. In different headquarters, you've got the forward headquarters, you've got the main headquarters. And so this is a unit called the Glory Corps. And so they have their Glory Forward, but it's a Space Force, so that's just on a ship somewhere.
Okay.
Whereas Glory, Maine is an actual stationary headquarters hidden on some planet somewhere. And this is a story of survival about 4 people who get marooned on a planet. You've got a brand new lieutenant, you've got a shipboard psychoanalyst, you've got a conscientious objector, and you've got a very hard-bitten ranger-style commando. And they've got nothing, no food, no water, no weapons. They don't even know where they are at first. And they have to come together as a group, as a team, or they die as individuals. And the whole idea is you've got to get to Glory, Maine, because Glory, Maine is the only place they know is actually in the vicinity.
I feel like AMC could make a show about this.
Well, yeah, I would love to. I would just love that.
I just need 3% for throwing it out
there. We go. If it happens. Yeah, so there's 4 other books in that series there. So that is the Sim War books, and it's a space war, and I had a lot of fun doing that. By the way, Glory, Maine, because they walk a lot, sleep deprived, no food. At first, they can't even find water. One of my buddies from Ranger School said, "Your book is Ranger School in outer space."
Well, we write what we know.
We write. You should write what you know. You should also write what you like, and that comes back to something I strongly believe is you really should find a job that you like, because we spend so much of our lives in a job, and it's just I've had jobs I didn't like, and I kept them while I was looking for the job that I wanted, and then made the transition. So I think it's very important for people, it's to give up that paycheck.
Sure.
And if you've got people dependent on you, you really have to make sure you've got the next paycheck ready, and then you make the move. But if you really hate what you do, you hate what you do. I've had jobs where I was there too long, where it was a good job at the beginning, and things changed, and then it became, I don't really like this anymore. So I'm a big supporter of getting up and going someplace else, as long as you go ahead and figure out where that place is first.
If you're falling forward. If you are of the growth mindset,
right.
I think one of the things that's hardest for me is like, I always want to grow. But when you're not growing, you know, one of the business consultant groups, I mean, it's like you grow or die.
I found this happening with me, is that if I've got the phone sitting there and I'm typing away and I look at the phone, I'll reach for it and check the email. So the technology, I think, is affecting us all. I know that my attention span isn't what it used to be because there's so many other things I could be doing.